Welcome back to another episode of the Jolt Second Cup podcast, brought to you by the brilliant minds here at the Central Connecticut Chambers of Commerce. I'm Johnny Burnham, and next to me, behind the mic, in a sweet set of bifocals, Andrew LaForge. Andrew, life treating you well? Those aren't bifocals, I know.
No, they're not bifocals, but yeah. No, life is going okay.
Okay.
Just a couple big major purchases on the way that I have to tend to, unfortunately. So, but we'll see how that goes.
Oh, man. So, yeah, no bifocals, I know. But how long you worn glasses for? Weird question, I know.
Probably since I was late teens,
Really?
right? But I haven't always worn them.
Really?
Yeah, usually it was just more of just kind of driving.
Okay.
Morning for driving, and then as years progress,
You want to see when you drive, I get it.
Yeah.
I
and
get
then
it.
for a while I haven't worn them, and then they wear them, and so I come and gone. But
So
I'm doing better.
funny, like I think I maybe told you this story before, but so I wore in my mid-20s, I wore glasses. Like where I couldn't see those scores on the TV, just watch sports and whatnot. I wore glasses, contacts for probably a year or two, went back to the eye doctor, and she's like, "You don't need these." And I was like, all right, cool. Like,
Score.
that's amazing. I mean, that's just how my superpowers, that's how amazing I am and correct my own vision. So 10 years, 15 years, I don't think, well, I've worn them probably once since, right? And that's because I never got that restriction taken off my license. And a nice officer reminded me one day that it's on my license. So I figured I'd put them on as I pulled back into traffic. But, so just to pat myself on the back of how awesome I am.
No.
Right?
Absolutely.
Give myself a pound on the back. You know what else? You know what else feels really good though? Is success, right? Success, especially for like business owners,
Totally.
and kind of overcoming odds and reaching a point. And we have a person here today, our guest, Thom Smith of Aventurine, who helps businesses and has dedicated his professional life at least to helping them reach those goals and to get some success. So, Thom, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
No problem. So, first of all, not what does Aventurine do, but what the heck is an Aventurine? Aventurine?
Well, first off, how's the daughter's wrist?
Daughter's wrist is good. It's
All
good.
right.
She went back, only took like 3 or 4 weeks. They didn't even x-ray it again. They're like, she's good to go.
All right. So I noticed the trifecta, right? It was left dominant hand,
left-handed,
off a picnic table.
Yep. Left-handed, left wrist.
And on her birthday.
On her birthday.
So on the mend.
On her birthday. So someone's listened to the show. I like this.
All right. So, so what is Aventurine? So, like, quite literally, Aventurine is actually a stone. Actually, this is it here for those that might be viewing at home. It's a stone. It's actually the reason that I named the business what I did. One, I wanted to be in the A's. I've had successful companies in the past that were in the A's. But 2, Aventurine I thought was unique. But 3, most importantly, the stone, its qualities and purposes are, very similar to what a business owner needs to succeed. So it actually is the stone of purpose, and there's a lot of leadership qualities that come with the stone. So that is kind of the story behind the name.
Interesting. Yeah. So how'd you stumble upon learning about that?
Yeah, there's this apparently.
Over a rock.
Yeah.
So he's like, what is that green stone there?
Apparently this internet thing isn't a fad. And so I actually found it, just through, I was looking, late night, just kind of names, things. I knew I wanted to be something in the A's, and, I didn't really want to go like Greek mythology or things like that. I didn't want it to be like generic, like Acme, right?
Sure.
The Roadrunner days.
Sure.
But so I wanted something, and I just stumbled across it through, actually like Google search, or what are some of the qualities, of business owners, things like that. And, a couple rabbit holes later, and here we are at Aventurine.
There you are.
Yeah.
There you are. All right. So that's what it is, technically. What is it that the business does?
Yeah. So it's a small business consulting company. And what that means is that really what I want to do is help small business owners build thriving companies. And I do that basically 3 ways. One is through what most people kind of think of business coaching and consulting, which, by the way, they're 2 different things. But that one-on-one with a business owner. The second thing is through group. So I do small group coaching. I know we took a tour of the office when you guys came in here.
Yep.
So the room right over here, it's where we do our small group classes. And the third thing is through just workshops and events.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I will say, you said when we came in here, so this is the first time we've taken the
Yes.
show on the road. So we're super excited. Thank you to capture the concept. So if you listened last week, Ashley Trelly. So this is her, her and her husband Joe's new podcast studio. So they're letting us use it. So big thank you to them.
Absolutely.
And it was, Tom didn't want to make the trek all the way to Bristol, so we came to Farmington for him, and he made
Whole
the
10 minutes.
Yeah, he made the 30-second walk down the hall.
Well, I'm convinced. My mother told me my whole life, like, you have a face for radio. So I'm like, I'm going to show her. We're going to have a podcast that's videotaped here and recorded. And so, yeah.
Awesome. So, you said business coaching, right? Yeah. But I've always thought like success in business, right, affects your personal life in a lot of ways. Do you ever think does that intersect with what you do? And obviously, like you said, you're a business coach, but in some way, is that, I don't want to say a life coach. I know that's a whole different thing, but what's the intersection of those?
Yeah. So maybe I can back up and just maybe explain briefly what the difference is between coaching and consulting. But and when it comes to coaching, personal and business, the two aren't mutually exclusive. They do go hand in hand. But really, I would say, 75% what I do is on the consulting side, which is really identifying the problems and needs and challenges in a business, doing a deep dive audit, seeing what needs to be kind of fixed, what's going well, what needs, could be enhanced, and then putting strategies in place and then helping that business owner deploy those tactics for each of those strategies. Coaching tends to be more on the kind of skill development and ability, accountability side. So, I do both, but it's more tilted onto the consulting side where it's really rolling up our sleeves, down the trenches with the business owners to figure out what's going on.
Yep. So how'd you become sort of the expert, right? Like, I'm sure you went through some kind of trials and tribulations yourself, maybe as a business owner, maybe just in a career path. What's kind of your journey to?
Yeah. So I started, I cut my teeth in small business. And so I was, I kind of joking before the show here, I grew up in Pennsylvania. I always joke there, but it's, actually it's like 30 minutes north of Pittsburgh is where I grew up, my family. And we owned a nursery and garden center. And before it was a nursery and garden center, it was literally right across the street from our house. It was a junkyard. And my father kind of being this like serial entrepreneur, saw it as an eyesore, bought the property, stripped it down, excavated, and put a beautiful nursery and garden center. So that was when I was 12 years old. Before that, he was a contractor. And so quite literally, I grew up in a family business life. My first job was really, the day before Thanksgiving, getting 800 Christmas trees delivered to the lot. And you have to move them before, December 24th. Otherwise, there's no trees or there's no presents under the tree that year, right? So you learn pretty quickly. But, I think he did a really good job at like bringing business in, but just terrible at business himself. Sure. And I don't think, I don't blame him or anything like that. He's long since passed, but they didn't know any better. Like there wasn't people like me out there. Yeah. And so I always swore that if I ever got to the point and kind of had some life experiences, I'd like to go back to helping small business owners. And so through this journey, I've, started, scaled and exited companies, a couple on my own, one, or two helping other folks as well. And two of them being national companies that started from just an idea or a concept. So I think that kind of gives me a leg up, on some competition and gives me some real life experience, not just what has worked, but more importantly, like what have we just totally failed at that we can teach other people how to avoid that.
Sure. Excuse me. Is that a nursery? Still in the family or what happened there?
It is not. Thanks for bringing up a sore subject. I'm just kidding.
He ruined a lot of Christmases he didn't want to talk about.
No. So, honestly, you never know what pathway you're going to be on. I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. My father was 47. He got terminal with cancer. He was dead by 49. And so here I am in my 20s looking around and after the funeral, quite frankly, walking through the nursery. And I'm like, I don't know that I want to repeat the pattern. For my father, everything was when I retire, ... Mm-hmm. We'll hang out more. We'll go on vacation. Now, this and that. Obviously, that never came. So, what we did, that was actually my first time actually selling a business. When I came into the business after getting out of school, it actually just became, we started to make it profitable. And then, when he passed, I could do anything in life. So we actually sold the business, gave the money, which wasn't a lot, but they didn't have a retirement back then. So gave the money to my mother, and then I just, took a different path, into real estate and then renewables, and now into, helping small businesses.
What a good son. Yeah. So what brought you east?
East, yeah. So actually, I was working for a startup. It was a renewable energy company. It was a solar company. And actually, funny story, Andrew and I spent a day together.
A day or a week.
At the company, whatever it was. So I started with the original. The name came up. I'm like, why is he in my phone under this company? And then I asked him at one of the Jolt meetings, and then we figured
Andrew's everywhere. Nobody can escape him. He's going to get you.
I lasted a whole week, almost 2 weeks there. It was good.
Not his fault that he.
No, it is not. No, it's not.
So, but just to kind of give you a backdrop of the story. So the company that I worked for was a small little startup out of Maryland. I was employee number 17. Came on actually just as a sales rep it was a residential rooftop solar company. Within 9 months, I was managing some offices between Ohio, Michigan, and parts of Western Pennsylvania. That grew. I became director of East Coast sales. That's what brought me over to Connecticut, was opening up offices in Mass and Connecticut, which is, we had one here in Middletown. And then that continued to grow. So by the end, we had over 500 employees. I was head of residential sales. We were acquired. I was not part of the ownership team, but like the leadership team. So, kind of helped through the transition. But when you're acquired by a $40 billion company and, this little business was a rounding error, they decided they took it a different direction and just went all commercial and not resi, and which is why Andrew only lasted.
The crazy thing is, so I walked in there one day and, normal day, I'm all excited. I left my job for 10 years and I'm coming in. And I remember everyone's all gathered, like everyone's there. And there's like a security guy standing outside. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? He's like, yeah, no, this is it. And they just shut everything down. And the worst part was there was someone who was hired a week after I did. So this was his first week before. I was like, oh man. Yeah, it was,
so
that's my quick story.
Laughing. That's funny.
Back to this and why I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that I hated, like the corporate politics, and then the this type of stuff that goes on, the restructuring and reorgs and stuff. I just do not enjoy that part of the business, and so it's where I wanted to return to kind of small business startup life.
Very cool, man. It's a great story.
It's a small world.
It's all right, buddy.
I'm in a much better position.
That's right. That's the way things kind of work out. It's funny how that happens. So I'll phrase it as what's more of a challenge time, I guess, for you, like working with someone who literally just decided, hey, I'm gonna go for this. I like doing this thing. I'm gonna make it my job, but has no like necessarily business sense or anything. It's sort of starting from scratch. Or someone who's been at it for a while, kind of chugging along, but can't sort of get over the top for whatever reason. I'm sure you would work with both, right? But is there a preference on, hey, like it's easier to get in there and start from the ground up, or?
Yeah. So, I guess to the point there, I may not work with both.
Okay. All right.
Just, you reach a certain level or point where it's like, if somebody isn't willing to, do the things and help themselves, then, I don't really want to be part of that journey then. Okay. So it doesn't matter if they're, what they are in revenue, how many employees or this or that. They have to be coachable. They have to want to get there. Otherwise, it's not worth my time. It's not worth it. The outcome's going to be the same no matter what. I think, one of the biggest challenges for anybody, especially maybe we should define it, like small business, like the Small Business Association or Administration classifies like small business as anything under 500 employees. Like that's ridiculous, right? That's a pretty big segment. Yeah. So, I think there's probably, I do work with small businesses that fit into that, but a lot of what I work with is also those micro businesses. So typically under 10 employees,
Yeah.
which one includes the owner. The biggest challenge right now, I think, it's probably two things. One is money, right? They're limited funds, they're bootstrapping,
Sure.
and then two is just how do I get immediate revenue in the door? How do I get leads in? How do I do that? And then from that, your other problems can start, well, how do I get them in the door? How do I convert them? Are we operationalizing on this? Do I have the right technology? But I think the two biggest ones is really, having limited cash flow, and then just, kind of those lead generation, strategies.
Yeah. So putting the cash flow thing aside, right? Because you need money
common
to make
problem,
things work. Like,
yeah.
let's not, it is what it is,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what are maybe some of the more common but also kind of complex issues that maybe a small business, a micro businesses face? Like, I don't necessarily mistakes they make or whatever, but what kind of holds, if there is an umbrella of common themes?
In general,
Yeah.
I would say probably the first thing is trying to be everything to everybody. So not having a niche. And when I say having a niche, it doesn't mean that's all you have to do, but you need to be able to focus on one or two or three areas.
Sure.
Because without doing that, you can't take this, spray and pray approach to your marketing and everything else. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to really build at scale. So I would say, number one is figuring out, what you're really good at, what you like, and then once you do that, it's like, okay, that's what you do, but why should anybody care?
Yeah.
And so that is, we call it, what is your market dominating position? So what makes you better, unique? Why are you the obvious choice opposed to your competitor? And why should anybody care? So fundamentally, whether it's in group coaching or one-on-one, that's always where I start. We look at their budget and we see if we can find immediate gains from cutting costs and stuff like that. And then two, we figure out really who the hell they are.
Sure.
A lot of times they have that idea,
Yeah.
but they just can't. My job is to help them extract it and put it down.
So how do you start off with someone? Someone approaches you. How do you start off? Do you go like if they're established business, they have a retail space or whatever, you just go there, visit, and kind of see how things operate? Do you sit down with them immediately and talk to them, or like how do you assess what they need?
Yeah. So it starts with like just an hour conversation, just to kind of get an overview of who they are, where they, where they are in their business, and what their general goals are, and pretty high level stuff. From there, I say, hey, why don't we agree? I'm going to spend 2 hours with you. Doesn't cost anything. I'm going to spend 2 hours and then do an assessment of their business. There's typically like 27 different areas of a business. It can be, everything from marketing and sales and conversions and, cutting costs and their finances. But during that 2 hours, we'll typically pick out like maybe 3 to 5 areas that I believe that will be like the low-hanging fruit. Like if they were to do this and focus in on this over the next 6 months, that they'll be able to see some, immediate return on their investment. So we just kind of hone in on that. And then, if they then become clients, then what we'll do is a full deep dive in their business. It typically takes about 8 hours and literally go through, audit their business and see, where they are and how we can help.
How do you manage people's expectations? Because, coming from the advertising sales background, there's always been, people want immediacy. They want a quick return on their investment, whether it's in advertising or whatever they do. How do you temper their expectations as far as, because I'm sure this is a long process. It's not, something that's going to happen instantaneously. How do you kind of manage those?
Yeah, great question. So there's, I think there's probably a couple of parts to that. One is just simply by setting expectations. It's one of the classes that I actually teach is setting proper expectations, which is typically your time, agenda, outcome, what you want that, engagement to look at. And then being very upfront about that. Two is I tell them like, hey, look, like you didn't drive the donkey into the ditch overnight. It's not going to come, we're not going to be able to pull it out overnight here. So there is a process. It's typically, a 6 month or greater, process for us to kind of course correct a little bit. And two is like, or the third thing is like, this isn't a, go to a seminar, rah, quick hit, add a girl, add a boy. Like, that's not that. Like, I always say that, like, that kind of stuff is motivational. That's great. And it'll get you going, but it's the discipline that keeps you going. And so when you work with, myself or somebody like me, it's really about the discipline. It is the accountability. It's the checking in every week, having those meetings and staying focused to a structure that we've, that roadmap that we've outlined together of how we're going to get there. So regular check-ins, expectations, I think is probably the best way to kind of align each other.
Interesting. Is there something to be said though, like to the thing like, hey, like you need to coach someone up though, right? Like, yes, if things aren't working good, tell them that too. But is there sometimes just a motivational piece? Like you can do this, like X, Y, and Z, sure. But like, it's also up to you to.
There's a lot of holding feet to the fire. Sure. Like there's some uncomfortable moments. Yeah. And I think really the difference, I think this company and what I do was a natural fit. So I've coached sports for 28 plus years, lacrosse, hockey, football. And so it's just a little bit different here and even different from times, right? So, 20 plus years ago, you might have been able to grab somebody by their face mask and say, get in there, do this, right?
Sure.
Maybe not so much anymore, right? But here it is very much similar though. It is like, I reserve the right to call, this is a PG podcast. So I reserve the right to call BS, right? And I tell them that, and I will say, permission to be frank with you. And they'll say, all right, they already know what's coming at that point there. Sure. And then, it's just, sometimes there's, true, conditions that prevent somebody from, reaching some up. And sometimes it's just in their own head.
So I could see you as the Mike Dick of
everyone puts on a helmet when
maybe the Bill Cowher. I'm from Pittsburgh. Maybe the Bill Cowher.
That's a good one. That's a good. So you mentioned football. Yeah. Who's the better football player, you or your significant other?
So definitely. So for those that don't know, so my
backstory.
My wife Jen. So she played women's professional football for the Pittsburgh Passion in Pittsburgh. She played for a number of years and then ended up getting. She ended up breaking her leg and then getting pregnant in the same year. I was only responsible for one.
Sure. All right.
Yeah. The leg will heal. Andrew's still trying to process that one. But no, so she's definitely the better football player. So, growing up in Western Pennsylvania where you get, 5,000 to 10,000 people in the stands on a Friday night. I've made it, youth all the way up to 8th grade. By the time I got into high school, I remember my what would have been the football coach saying, "Don't bother, you're too small." And I then went into lacrosse and had a much better time and success in lacrosse than I did in football. But definitely my wife.
That's a funny story. Yeah. So obviously, I mean, you have your home life, right? But you're having get to know you some. Like you're an active guy. Like you're out there at all these networking events. You're hosting your own things, come up with new ideas. You're consulting. You're doing all this. I mean, how do you sort of manage that go type attitude that a lot of small business owners encounter, right? Like you're kind of always on the go, you're running your own thing, and sort of like that home life to keep your family happy. I mean, is there a trick to success or is it just...
Look, I mean, I think with everything, it's all about balance. So I think there's probably a couple parts to that. So one, maybe a good tip for anybody that's listening out there is when you're trying to do that and you're trying to build a business and you know how much time it takes, one of the things you can do is involve your family and especially your children in your goals. And that way, if you are building towards something and they're part of that goal, what that reward would be on that goal, they tend to give you a little bit more leniency, right? If you are missing something here or there. That said, there's very little that I miss. Going back to not wanting to repeat the pattern. I felt myself doing that in corporate. There was one year that I had spent 32 weeks of the year traveling. And then I said, no. I had to call a timeout, not for me, right? So I think it's all about balance, involving the family so they understand and know. I don't know if there's any, kind of magic pill or secret sauce to it. It's just balance and expectations and
Well, it's
communication.
kind of a team effort too, right?
It really is.
Because it's, there's a lot of stuff that you got to manage on your family life, but they also got to obviously be there supportive as well. So it's kind of, give and take. You got to have a nice kind of balance between the two.
Totally. Yeah.
So I want to go back to the football playing wife for a second.
Yes.
Because this is intriguing to me. But so how did the Smiths come to be, right? How'd you meet her? How did this all kick off? You see her on the field, she laid someone out, and you're like, that's my girl, or what happened?
So, all right. So it depends who you ask. But I'm going to give you my version,
All right, that's
which
the one I want.
I'm in front of the microphone, so it's the most important version,
Only
right?
one that- yeah.
So we actually met in high school.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't say we were high school sweethearts. I had asked her out one time, and her version of the story is I asked her to whatever it was, homecoming, prom, or this. She ended up going with somebody else. I kind of like, all right, you're dead to me type thing. And that was, I think, 11th grade. 12th grade, I was, my senior year, I got out of school early every day because I did I always call it a work release, but I forget what it was called. I actually went to the family business. I got out at like 1 o'clock. I had to have them sign off, which was really just me signing off. But but I left, and so there was, I remember, and product of the 90s here, so you're gonna have to visualize this with me. So I remember leaving the building after the bell rang, and for whatever reason she was at her locker. I had walked past her, and going back to the 90s. So she had a denim, jump. What do you call that? Not jumpsuit. Overalls with like a black tank top underneath.
The 90s look,
Totally. And I'm like, and I passed her up, and I'm like, what the hell? So I turn around, go back to the locker, put on my full charm. End up, I think it was like a Wednesday. That Friday night, being that entrepreneur, I had a pickup truck when I was in high school. I was, landscaping and splitting wood and, snow plowing and this and that. So we were supposed to go to get that date that Friday night. We went. I said, sorry, hon, but I got work to do. I had like a whole bunch of parking lots. So she ended up, coming with me the whole time. We were, we ended up like at Denny's at 2 a.m. and the rest was history. Yeah. So I wouldn't say it was high school sweethearts. It was towards the end of high school, but it was just.
So technically, she wasn't dead to you then.
She wasn't dead to me then. No, I
revived her. Yeah.
The statute of limitations had ran out, and I gave her another chance, and she's so lucky to for it.
Yeah, sold her a Christmas tree, and gotcha. Yeah. That's funny. So I mean, you're focused on your client's success, right? That's what you want. What does success look like for you in your business?
I think it's probably actually pretty similar, and I wouldn't say I'm there yet. I would say most people want and think that they have a scalable business, but the reality is almost nobody does. And so success would be having a business that you can scale where you can walk away for 2 months. And the business continues to run itself. Mm-hmm. Or you're not getting more than, a few CCs a day on email. Or, you don't have to worry about, what you're going to do. Like, you get to choose what you're going to do that day. You don't have to worry about your calendar and things like that. So I think it's really, those things where you don't have to worry about the money and the time and the freedom, and that starts to come. So I'd say it's probably very similar for me as it is, the people that I work with.
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a common goal. I think that's something we all kind of strive for, right? Yeah. So
awesome. In terms of sex, do you have a highlight of someone you consulted, or like a big success story?
I would say it's ongoing. I think there's probably a couple examples, but probably the most example, there's somebody that I'm working with now that, looking at her business just from a different standpoint, then, it's we kind of have like, we walk through our houses and you might have that, that same, whatever that's been sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Everybody walks by it. Nobody does anything, but somebody new comes in and they're like, why the hell is that in the corner? Right. So it's kind of like having a fresh set of eyes. And that's what I do. So, doing that with a recent client where we looked at, hey, you may have been doing something this way. Have we looked about outsourcing this part? And for her, it was like payrolling and some of the other things that went along with it. And by doing that, just on her unemployment compensation insurance, just by outsourcing her payroll, she's going to save a minimum for this quarter of $50,000.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that was a big one for me. For some.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And I think like you said it earlier, but like we're all not good at everything or great at everything, right?
Yeah.
So if you need help, you have to be willing to kind of accept that.
And I'm the first one to tell you, like, I'm never the smartest person in the room. I put better people around me who are smart. So I can, I have a team of people around me that I can, pull in. Like, I know when to stay in my lane. Sure. My lane is typically sales, marketing, some other things. But when we start to get out of that, I'm like, no, we need to pull in this person or this person to help you. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be, kind of the grand poobah or the end all be all to somebody's business. That's not me.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're an active chamber member. So, I'm hoping your answer is a positive one, but I'll ask. If not, we'll just cut you out and Andrew will do an impression and we'll just dub over it. But, I mean, how is being, not just a chamber member, but someone active in the things the chamber offers, like, how has that helped you?
Oh, yeah. So not only am I, an active, but I believe in it. And I would be, and I tell some of the folks in my classes and clients, like, I would be a hypocrite if I wasn't personally active in doing the things that I'm asking them to do.
Sure.
And have literally built 2 national companies that, part of that was you have to be hyper local. Mm-hmm. How do you get hyper local and how do you be the expert in your market? You join the local chamber, you join your networking groups and BNIs and things like that, and you need to become visible. And so I would be a hypocrite if I didn't do the same. And plus, it's just, you get to realize so much information. You see who the movers and shakers are, who can help you, who you can help. Yeah. And so, yes, I wholeheartedly believe in it. And, I never understand why people just kind of sign up and then they're never there for anything. To me, it's a waste. Like, you're not going to get anything out of it unless you're actively active in it.
100%. Good answer. Opinion. We'll keep that. We'll keep it in.
Good answer. That one in?
Good answer. Yeah. So I'm going to let Andrew, you got something else. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to you for.
There's more?
Got some hard hitting questions.
This is the hard ones now?
These are the tough ones.
Remember, I'm not the one that lets you go in that
he already said he's not the smartest one in the room. Yeah. He's going to call in reinforcements.
All right, cool. All right, so we already know you play a bunch of sports, lacrosse and football and hockey and all that stuff. I don't know, are you still active in those, or do you still play those, or are there other sports or activities you're doing now?
Yeah.
That you like?
So played football, played lacrosse, didn't play hockey. I played pond hockey, rec. Like, honestly, we were too poor to play hockey. It was too expensive. It was a fringe sport even back then. Couldn't afford it. So my level of involvement now, I think that, my son is 16 and is, kind of aged through, me coaching him. And so I've been, a coach actually a lacrosse coach long before my son. And still active. I actually started, kind of coming full circle, and you're getting old, is like this year, him and I went back and started coaching small kids together. So awesome. He's utilizing it as he's getting, community service hours for his school. And I'm utilizing it as I get to stay close to the sport that I love. And it's a cool experience to be now, somebody that you coached, but now somebody, teaching a little bit of leadership on the sidelines.
That's amazing.
It's a pretty cool experience.
That's really cool.
Still involved with, coaching lacrosse and a little bit of hockey. Yeah.
So you're not on the pickleball court yet?
No, not at all.
Fair enough. All right. So moving on, what is your favorite go-to home cooked meal? Like, whether it's a Sunday meal or whatever, the meals that take like all day or whatever. What's your go-to?
Easy. Definitely anything south of the border. So Mexican, and not like, the traditional. So I have an aunt who is from Mexico City. She came up when we first moved up here, downloaded, from her, not downloaded in the sense, but from her brain, a bunch of her recipes and things like that. So that's like a fan favorite, whether it's, any type of, traditional tacos and things like that. But also she's got some cool salsas and stuff, never got into like the mole or anything like that, but, maybe some other time. Good. But yeah, definitely, anything south of the border, including Mexican street corn, which my son loves. Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that. Yeah. All right. So if you can go back in time and visit any historical person, meet anyone you want to meet, who would it be?
Boy, this is a tough one. Let's see here. Well, I just came from a weekend with my brother and a couple of cousins from Gettysburg. So learned a lot there. I mean, I've been there 4 or 5 times, but maybe like an Abe Lincoln.
Okay.
I mean, if you're going way back in time, right?
Well,
but it's still only 160 years. I mean, it seems so
wow.
far, but I would say, I think that might be a good one. Or there was also, I think the names were the Bilski brothers. So those were the guys. They were 2 brothers. Actually, I think there was 3. I think one was killed. There's a movie about it, and so I'm bad with facts and stuff like that. But basically, during the war, they took Jewish people into the woods. They hid them out for, I think it was like 18 months, something like that. Again, bad with facts. Somebody can look it up here. But basically saved over 1,200 people by hiding out, creating, these just basically encampment in the woods, deep in the woods during, during the war. And so I think that would be a cool one. Again, somebody can fact check me and see the.
I'll take your word for it. So
there's a movie I forget what it's called,
where you're wrong. I'll send you an email.
I think it'd be a really cool one too. I mean, just
that'd be cool. That's
a little bit more
recent.
Hard
question, on the spot.
Not a bad answer, right? I wonder if you could. Now you go back to the time travel and you start thinking of like the effects of what decisions you make. You go back in time, meet Abraham Lincoln, be like, "Hey, don't go see that play, man." But that's cool. So fall's coming up. You got the autumn season coming up.
Yep.
Are you a big pumpkin guy, or if not, like what's one thing you like about the fall?
I don't think they make, and nor would I have a pumpkin spice bourbon.
Well, there's something that could be sitting on there, right?
No, of all the ideas, that's probably not one of them. Like, I love fall. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the season. Fall and spring are probably my 2 favorite. But no, I don't think that there's like, it's.
So
I like all the seasons.
Running to Starbucks and being like pumpkin. Yeah.
No.
Same,
No. I think I like the. If anything, I think I like the idea of it and cooler, and then changing your drink from something that has a little bit more cinnamon in it or something like that. But that's about it for me.
Sounds good. All right, so here's the hardest one.
All right.
So we're on the same wavelength as far as 90s and 90s music.
We'll see.
All right. So you mentioned Stone Temple Pilots, at their forum there last week. So now I want you to rank these 90s era bands.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. All right. So do you want me to give them to you all in one shot and you can rank them, or
how many are there? Because
10.
32.
Well, there's a lot of bands, right? I mean, I'm leaving
I can't handle that many.
I'll do it to one at a time. All right.
Yeah.
So we got Soundgarden.
Okay.
All right. And we got Nirvana.
Yep.
All right. And Pearl Jam.
Yep.
And Stone Temple Pilots, of course.
Uh-huh.
All right. Smashing Pumpkins. Alice in Chains.
Okay.
Silverchair. Green Day. Bush. And Red Hot Chili Peppers.
All right. So I didn't think this was going to be a controversial podcast.
That's what we do.
But I'm going to give you top 5.
Okay.
And then everything beyond that is just, and again,
wherever you want to put them.
my opinion only, disclaimer,
That's
right?
fine. Just be careful. Look at that door.
Tom's
Right
views do
over there.
not represent the
go-
views of the Central Connecticut Chambers.
I'm going to have to go Nirvana first.
Okay.
That was me even before Pearl Jam, although Pearl Jam, I would say 2 for me. 3, just because I just love the bass, would be Green Day. 4, probably Alice in Chains. 5, Soundgarden, and you can put like Smashing Pumpkins and everybody else below that.
Okay. That's fair.
And what's yours?
I see some disagreement.
Yeah,
Some disappointment.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, I guess.
Just gonna go home.
Yeah,
No, it's not a bad list. I mean, a lot of these are very close to each other,
Yeah.
and so they can really kind of go either way. In terms of influence, and obviously Nirvana is probably number 1.
Yeah.
My favorite personally is Stone Temple Pilots.
Oh, I forgot about that. That would I told you I saw them.
Yeah.
I don't think I forgot to put them on the list. I bumped them up ahead of Alice in Chains. I put Stone Temple Pilots in there.
Okay,
Yeah. Top 5.
fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah,
Forgot about them. I need to write them down.
All right, so maybe I won't do 10 next time, but
Yes.
but yeah, no, I mean Nirvana, yeah, maybe 2, and I would probably go Green Day, Alice in Chains, kind of that way, right? So
Maybe after the show, we can do then 90s hip hop and a 90s
There you
country.
go.
well, the country, I don't know if you got me, but it's all it's all good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. So it wasn't too controversial, but you're good.
Yeah,
You passed the test.
somebody's gonna bitch about it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I hope so.
That is not. Like, I don't
means
know
people
who
are listening, right?
Silverchair is, but they're not.
And maybe I'll just share to finish off here the Stone Temple Pilot story that I told you, because I was went to their concert.
Not the oil filters, STP.
No, yes. So when we were at the digital marketing and Brandon Forum, thank God Katie's hand went up and I said, the STP reference,
I was shocked, and now we're doing.
Well, I was reading the room, but so Stone Temple Pilots, right? So I actually went to see Stone Temple Pilots, and this is before they were big.
Oh.
They actually opened up for the Butthole Surfers, which I have a hard time even saying that name, but not my brand of music. But to give you an idea of how new they were, that they were opening up for them, 2 totally different crowds.
For
This is
sure.
an outdoor venue, pretty small. And then so Scott Weiland was up there was singing, I'm half the man I used to be. Somebody threw a boot at him. And mid-song or mid-sentence, he catches it. I'm half the man I used. He catches it, he looks at it, and I'm going to kick you in your effing teeth. And then the crowd went wild. And then there was just, hence this little chip in the tooth here. The mosh pit, kind of went wild.
You
And
got hit with the boot. It was you.
no, it was definitely not me. But, I didn't leave there unscathed.
I mean, we can share war stories about concerts and mosh pits if you want. I do gotta say, I do have a funny story about Green Day. So I saw Green Day years ago at the Webster Theater, and it was so a very small venue where everything is like right around the Nimrod album. So they were on their way to being really big, right? And it was like right around Halloween. My friend bought an eye patch, and he threw it on stage, and Billy Joel Armstrong put it on his head and wore it for like the rest of the show, right? And the crazy thing is they did a review in the Hartford Courant or something, and they were talking about what happened on stage, and even mentioned the eye patch that was on him. And it was just kind of one of those things that just kind of sticks with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my iPad. Yeah. Nice. That's it?
That is it. Yeah.
Oh, Tom flew through those, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Keep it easy for him,
Yeah.
Man,
Well, that's
oh,
great.
man.
Well, appreciate your insight into the 90s music scene and everything else, Tom. We appreciate all you do for the chamber and always being a part of our events, and it's been fun having you on here. If you guys don't subscribe to the show, please do so. We're out there wherever you can find your podcasts. Andrew, I'm giving you a ride back since we're off site, but we'll talk soon.
All 10 minutes just because Tom didn't want to drive.
Yeah, that's all right.
Anyway,
But you got to see the beautiful studio
It
here
is.
for Capture the Concept.
It
and
is.
And by the way, I appreciate, because all these 90s references Joe and Ashley don't get. So thank you,
No,
gentlemen,
it's
for
perfect.
that.
We are. That's
we
what
are
I've got.
good. And I'll talk 90s anytime.
Thank you.